I have two local mental health professionals, Rhoda and Wendy. If you can both kind of say hello and introduce yourselves just briefly.
Good morning, and my name is Rhoda Dietrich. I am the director at Crossroads Counseling Ministries, which is located right here in our home community of Frankenmuth. And I would like to thank Bridget and her team for putting this together as a resource for our community. Just education, awareness, and know that you are not alone.
And I also want to thank you for having me, and more importantly, thank you for supporting and advocating for mental health. So a little bit about myself. My name is Wendy Shapansky, and I have a private practice here in Frankenmuth called Hope and Healing Counseling. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm certified in trauma, Christian, and drug and alcohol counseling. And some of my areas of expertise are depression, anxiety, addictions, mood disorders, grief, trauma, and adjustment disorders.
Great. So we were talking a little bit before, oops. So we were talking a little bit before we got online and live about a call I had received a couple of weeks ago from a woman who was clearly kind of distraught, and I was really unprepared for how this COVID-19 crisis is really impacting people in very different ways. And even in my own household, you know, my junior in college had her trip abroad canceled. My junior in high school had school canceled. You know, I'm working in a totally different way. Everybody at work is working in a different way and stressed, and everything is just coming at people so fast. I think it's important, at least it helped me to know that other people are feeling it too. And so I didn't know if either of you had some suggestions or tips or help that you could offer.
Yeah, so most importantly, you know, talk to your children, you know, generate some discussion about how they feel. You know, resist the urge to jump in and want to make them feel better. Rather, it's important to validate how they're feeling, and however they feel is okay and completely normal. And teach them how to, or help them to express that in a healthy way, whether it be talking to you, talking to friends, crying, journaling, exercise, music, whatever it is. You know, I would encourage, you know, praise them. You know, I'm so proud of how you're handling this. You know, look for the silver lining. There always is one. Sometimes it takes a little while to find it, but there is a silver lining. So look for that. Don't give false promises. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty. We really don't know what's going to happen. So you don't want to promise something that you can't, you know, keep. And don't be afraid to share how you feel. Yeah, honey, I'm really sad and disappointed too. Make sure if you answer any questions that you do that in an age appropriate, you know, way. You know, how you would talk to a teen would be very different than, say, elementary or middle school. Rhoda, did you have anything?
Thank you. I think those are all great points to keep in mind. I would acknowledge with, especially like age appropriate in the college or high school years, this is a difficult time and nobody has a roadmap on this. We are all just moving forward the best we know how, and that they are not alone with any concerns that they might have, but acknowledging that this is disappointing. I want to say the high school seniors, for example. I mean, we as adults understand this is not the end of the world, but to them it is. And acknowledging that it's a scary time, this uncertainty. They had a plan and now that's falling apart, and they're younger, and we as adults look at it differently. So when it comes to our children, keep that in mind. And what I have heard from many people and have read is, especially for the younger people, provide some sort of a structured schedule. Just get up and have pajama day every day, I'm not sure would be the healthiest answer for everyone. A day here and there, sure. Who doesn't want to just lay around and do nothing, but I'm not sure that that is a valid way to proceed with our new normal, whatever you want to refer to it as, keeping in mind that children need structure just like adults do. So they look to the adults to help them with that. And, I think we as parents and adults need to help guide children with their thoughts and stay calm, and going back to the acknowledge this is difficult. I had a 4.5-year-old tell me recently that just like this, saying with her little hand, we can't go out and see people right now because the whole world is sick. Not everybody, but we don't know who is and who isn't. So we have to do our part and stay home. It's just the way it is. And I thought, well, I'm sure that they didn't get that off of television. That was from their parent. And I'm applauding those parents because they're the leader for that little person. And yeah, it's a challenging time.
And if I can piggyback off that for a second, Baroda, I mean, it was very good, is that children do look to their parents, to learn how to cope. So, it's important that we as parents model appropriate, healthy behaviors in terms of how to handle this and how to respond. And, making sure that, we're calm and we're positive and we're reassuring to the best extent that we can be. And, I would also reiterate keeping a schedule, that there's some predictability, it's kids need that, and keeping to, and I'm going to push the exercise, daily physical activity is very important. I'm a big proponent of that. And helping kids to self-soothe, to learn how to calm themselves. So yeah, just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So we've talked a little bit about some of our younger people, and I'll have to agree. When I did the laundry, and I have teenagers, there was nothing but like yoga pants and sweatpants, and so for the past 3 days, I've decided that I had to wear real clothes, just to kind of encourage everybody else in the house to act somewhat normal. And it's very easy, I think, to fall into this kind of lull, and it's hard. So we talked a little bit about how to deal with kids. I know from speaking with other people my age, at least initially, there was difficulty in getting like people my parents' age to kind of take this seriously. And do you have any suggestions in terms of how to maybe help with those conversations?
So to taking this seriously, my experience has been because of the changes within our leadership and their direction that I'm hearing that people are taking this far more seriously, at least within our community. And for that, I applaud all of those that are doing this hard work and staying isolated and allowing people to help them. And I think that's a huge challenge for many, many people. And, so that's where I would ask our community to reach out to your isolated neighbor. There are many people that live completely alone, and that in and of itself presents different challenges. But if they're worried or concerned about, Bridget, you mentioned earlier, getting their yard completed and those kind of things because they don't own a lawnmower, you know what? We can all just walk over to our neighbors and say, would you like me to cut your grass for you this week until your service comes back? I mean, I don't see that as a big deal. And we all have a lot more time right now to help one another out. And I think we need to be mindful that neighbor might not be your best friend, but they might be experiencing all kinds of things that you have no clue because they've been completely alone for a month, haven't had a hug, haven't had a handshake. That I'm going to defer to Wendy on because those isolation issues are huge for people. But I think we need to step up and help one another out. in ways we haven't thought of before.
Well, and I would ask that we would consider, Mary Ann had mentioned this before we started, the medical community and all the professionals who are risking their lives. Maybe this is a time for us to develop some, not that we don't have it, but to foster some, deep empathy for, all those people who are, getting out there and witnessing this trauma and will likely, have PTSD and be dealing with this for quite some time. It's easy to, to focus on our own, needs and, the lawn care is upsetting and that type of thing, but I think we need to step back and have real perspective in terms of how serious this is. Meaning, if it were your loved one or yourself who was facing, a real life and death moment, your lawn care wouldn't matter. And so, really helping, each other to gain that perspective and that empathy and, keeping this, relative, putting this into, the serious category that it deserves.
Wendy, can you explain exactly what PTSD is?
So it's post-traumatic stress disorder. It's, when you're faced with a trauma, and typically, some of the criteria that we see with PTSD are, recurring flashbacks of the trauma. Sometimes we relive the trauma, insomnia, difficulty, functioning and managing. And it's, it's very pervasive. It's, you lose sleep. A lot of people have nightmares over it. So going to work and seeing this, I mean, not just once, but day in and day out, has a huge impact on, mental health. And so on top of doing their job as a doctor, or nurse, or a medical professional, they're also having to manage this, trauma daily. And so we really need to support that, appreciate it, foster, whatever we can do to help them and, take this serious.
And just as we're talking about this, and Jamie might bring it up a little bit later as well, if you do know of someone who is in need of assistance, there is a program called Muth Serves, muthserves.com, and it connects volunteers and people who may need assistance. It's kind of like a matchmaking service almost. The Frankenmuth Police Department also has the ability for you to register an adult or yourselves for a check-in by the police department, and Chief Maurer can speak to that a little bit later. And one of the questions that we're getting is that for some of our people who would typically consider themselves mentally in a good place, they may not be able to recognize the impact that this situation is having on their mental health. What are some signs specifically for adults that they have never dealt with these sorts of struggles before?
Bridget, if I could go back to what you just said in terms of, Muth Serves resource. I just want to mention that MHACA, Michigan Mental Health Counseling Association, has partnered with, I believe it's the Department of Human and Health Services and Governor Whitmer to establish a hotline that allows the clients to be connected to counselors in the state of Michigan. So for example, if someone didn't have insurance and they called this hotline, then they would, they would make that transition seamless in terms of those providers who are doing pro bono or whatever the need is. So, in addition to taking advantage of, COVID hotlines and that type of thing, other hotlines and 1-800-SUICIDE and that type of thing. But back to your question about, recognizing the signs. So stress is a normal reaction to life's demands. And obviously during this pandemic, it's not uncommon to feel depressed or to feel anxious or overwhelmed, lonely. All of those things are normal. However, sometimes those responses can cross over into a territory that would require help and sometimes professional help. And so if I could offer some of those services and then come back to that for a minute, you know, make sure that you're taking advantage of your support system, you know, calling your friends and family. But don't be afraid to reach out to these hotlines, these resources that are available. Utilize EAP employee assistance programs, you know, call your primary physician, you know, call your mental health professional. If you don't have a mental health professional, know that the Office of Civil Rights, you know, has, at the urging of President Trump, has loosened the parameters on the platforms for telehealth. Whereas before it was strictly HIPAA compliant, they've opened it up to other platforms such as Zoom and FaceTime to allow for more therapists to better accommodate, you know, the needs. In addition to that resource that I just mentioned. So those, they're trying to make it very accommodating. And if I can just insert real quick, a few things about telehealth right now. It's very important to, you know, contact your insurance company to make sure that telehealth is covered under your plan. I haven't run into any issues with that with any of my clients. It's all been covered. What's very exciting to mention is that several insurance companies right now are covering telehealth at 100%, meaning they're waiving all the co-pays. And again, that's a disclaimer. It's important to contact your own insurance plan to make sure. And I don't know how that works with the deductibles, but I've been told it's through the end of May currently. And, and that's exciting and inviting and making those resources incredibly easy to utilize. I'm also a telehealth provider through MD Live. So if you can't find anything, you know, within the state, it's I believe it's a national platform that provides telehealth and telemedicine. And there's plenty of those kinds of, you know, in addition to MD Live, there's several of those that you could utilize too, you know, to take advantage of that. But in terms of, you know, identifying, you know, when it crosses over into, you know, maladaptive or, you know, that would require some, you know, assistance. I mean, I think it's important, you know, I mean, when in doubt, it's important to reach out to these services. And it's important to stay connected to each other to be able to, I think, have some kind of accountability. Whereas when you notice, oh, gee, you know, my friend Sally seems, you know, she's crying, you know, all day long, or she's crying every day, and it's out of the norm of, oh, gee, that seems pretty typical, or that seems normal. Then it doesn't hurt to reach out and get an assessment or talk to someone and have them, you know, evaluate and say, yeah, this does seem more severe, and might we meet weekly or talk weekly?
So I think all of those are, again, great points, Wendy. Thank you. Were you referring to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, the new statewide warm line? Is that one of the numbers that you were referring to that just came about, I want to say yesterday or the day before?
You know, a few days ago, I didn't have that number. So I'm going to say yes.
Okay, because I do have that number for anyone that is interested. It's 888-733-7753. And that's one tool of a phone number that a person can reach out to talk with another individual. It does not replace counseling, but it is, you know, a tool that the state of Michigan is offering. I have not called it. I'm not familiar with it, but I am familiar with the notification to us that it did come in. They're calling it a warm line, and it's open 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. We also have local community resources besides Christian counseling that's offered at Crossroads Counseling Ministries or with Wendy or other facilities. But there are Stephen ministers through a host of different churches. Those are trained individuals. They are not licensed therapists, let me clarify, but they are supportive services to people. So reach out to your church or give us a call at the office. I'm sure Wendy's familiar with Stephen Ministers as well as, call us. They're through the churches, but again, and then there are the National Suicide Prevention Hotline numbers, 273-8255, National Domestic Violence. Bridget, I'm sure that you probably have a list of these at your office as well, but I just want to encourage people, the part that Wendy started on is reach out. There are a host of resources available for people that otherwise might not have contacted someone, but domestic violence hotline number is 800-799-7233. Obviously calling 911 if you're in an emergency, you know, that is always available. But I think it's important that we do reach out and say it's okay to not be feeling 100% right now. And know that you can contact someone that would be available to assist.
Rhoda, thank you for that. And those are all great programs. I mean, the Stephen Ministry is a wonderful program. And I think it's important to, you know, to appreciate the gravity of, you know, this pandemic in terms of the increase in suicide rate. So I'm glad that you mentioned the 1-800-SUICIDE. And, you know, I would urge parents, you know, relatives, friends, that you would keep that in mind, you know, to assess for that and take it serious, because it is a time where I think those kinds of issues can increase, and just being very vigilant regarding that.
Great. There was a question from our group that said people who are used to being relatively busy are now labeled non-essential and struggling with this additional time, feeling like they should be accomplishing something. Do you have any suggestions there?
My first thought is everything's relative. So we're all essential. Right now, we're measuring that based on this current pandemic, but anything could change, and who was once non-essential could be essential. So, I mean, everyone is essential. And in terms of staying busy, you know, ask yourself, you know, what are the things that I wish I could have done and didn't have the time, and now I do, you know, whether it's house projects, you know, to really focus on the things that, you know, areas where maybe you've neglected. Now you have the luxury in doing it, and be very cognizant that we're not complaining about boredom, because again, back to the PTSD, the people who are working in grocery stores and risking their lives, and all the medical professionals, you know, and not to invalidate that. But also too, you know, you mentioned checking in on, you know, either elderly or people who are quarantined, you know, is to offer suggestions in terms of, you know, how to occupy our time in productive ways, whether it's a house project, a craft, you know, maybe it's a puzzle, anything that would, you know, help us to fill the time in a productive way. I mean, it's not uncommon for me to meet with clients, and they, you know, when I ask about their hobbies, they don't have any. And so explore, be creative, think about things. Would I like this? Should I try this? You know, you don't know until you try. And so this is a great opportunity, you know, to not only to occupy our time with fun things, but obviously to, you know, connect with our family and, you know, bond in ways that maybe we were too busy to do before. And it's important to stay connected too socially. I mean, for kids, but also for adults and people who are quarantined. Take advantage of those virtual options like Zoom and FaceTime, you know, check in on each other, especially those who are alone. I mean, my heart goes out to all the elderly, especially some who might have dementia or they don't quite understand what's going on, and they're alone. So not only are they confused or, you know, they're alone and they're really struggling, is, you know, check in, whatever you can do to stay connected.
We got a question via Facebook. What are some tips for adults to set daily schedules and hold themselves accountable to maintain those schedules?
So one of the things that I would offer, sorry, Rhoda, I don't mean to monopolize.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
So in terms of like our physical, it's important to maintain a healthy sleep schedule. Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time. Oftentimes our sleep schedule does get disrupted. but it's incredibly important to maintain that. That we're exercising, physical, daily, regular exercise, that we are having that we eat a well-balanced diet. Don't eat all your Easter candy in like 2 days like I did. But it's important, that you lay off the carbs, that you limit the caffeine, especially now the drugs, the alcohol, tobacco, really trying to avoid that instead of using that to cope. Emotionally, that you're taking care of your emotional needs, you're rejuvenating, you're doing the things that are replenishing, you're setting goals, projects, things that you want to accomplish, that you're trying to, I feel it's all about balance, that we're being productive, that we're, relaxing and making sure that we're taking time to attend to our emotional and physical needs, and staying connected, socially, that you're, connecting to your friends, your family, and that type of thing. Rhoda, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I agree with everything that you just said, but I go back to what I said earlier in reference to our children. If we can model behavior, the same thing that applies towards our children applies towards us. And so doing the similar things of the scheduling, like you indicated, and allow yourself time for fun. It's okay to have fun, even though this is a very, I don't want to say unfun, but this is a very devastating time within our world. It is okay to still have fun. Laughter is very necessary. Watch a goofy movie, read a funny story. Not everything has to be educational. The same with our children. Allow them that opportunity, but stay within a structured time frame. Some people are working from home, and that is, with younger children around, that is a huge challenge, and frustration builds with that as they're thinking they have to be perfect in all things, in the parenting thing and in their employment. It's not possible, parents. It is not possible to do both perfectly wonderful all day long, every day. Give yourself that break. You're doing your best. Keep doing your best. This will change in time. We will have a different normal than we are today. But I think that structure does help for adults as well.
One thing too, if I could add about, it's good to educate and to stay informed, at the same time, not at the expense of your mental health. So it's not uncommon to, it's information overload. If you're watching and, you're looking at everything and what's going on, that will impact us and create some anxiety. And for those people who already have anxiety, it's going to exacerbate significantly. So turning off the TV and being mindful of your limits and being mindful of your kids who are absorbing that and how that, how they're being affected by that. So, be very cognizant of that as well.
There's a question about the importance of getting outside. And I think you may have spoken to that, Wendy, and I think Rhoda too, about, having some activities, exercising, moving.
Absolutely. Fresh air is so important. Getting vitamin D, being active, not feeling cooped up. So I would get out as much as possible. And exercise can, it could be playing badminton or whatever. So I would absolutely encourage that.
And I agree 100%. We try to schedule X amount of time each day to not just have exercise, but to be in fresh air. Now, some of the weather days that we've had posted a challenge on that, but, where people might have walked in the schools before, but trying to walk outside in some of these windy days, it's a challenge. But, when you do, people step aside, they keep their social distance, and it's actually kind of pleasant to see so many people out doing that. But I think that is important as well. Structure, physical activity, and fresh air as well.
Great. So I'm just going to remind everybody watching us on Facebook that if you have a question, whether it's related to mental health or something in general, to go ahead and ask it. I want to say thank you very much to both Wendy and Rhoda. and ask that you hang out with us for a little bit longer if you don't mind. But I know that Chief Maurer and some of the others joining us may want to add a few messages here for the public.
Can I just say thank you so much for having us, and hopefully, as inviting as the telehealth is and fostering this support of mental health, hopefully when this is over, more people will be open and accepting and less stigma attached to mental health, wellness. That's my prayer.
Thank you, Wendy, and I would agree with that completely. And that is also something we pray for regularly, that there is no judgment placed on people who are seeking help. And I think time is allowing for that to be accepted more readily. So thank you for having me, Bridget.
Thank you. Jamie, I know you and I chatted a little bit, and you wanted to mention a couple ways that some businesses may be able to share some of their thoughts.
So thank you. I first wanted to say thank you to our mental health professionals on the call today. Some good reminders even for myself personally. Wendy, I have lots of Easter candy in front of me, unfortunately. So it's disappearing very rapidly. So I'm going to take your advice and try to stay away. One of the things I think that is sort of putting a lot more pressure and anxiety on people in our community is all the discussion about opening back up. What does that look like for our community? And that is going to, it's going to provide additional stress to different people in different ways. And so I just wanted to quickly sort of address that while it kind of looks scary and ugly on TV, in some regards, when you start talking about opening an economy up while we're in the middle of a public health crisis, I want people who are watching to understand that our community is doing all that it can to work together between our businesses and our public health officials to ensure that we're finding good solutions to work together so that we can just try and navigate this the best we can. It doesn't have to be about public health or mental health or business. We need all of these things for all of us to be healthy in the long term, and we need them to work together well. And so our goal locally here is to work with our business owners as well as you that are many of our guests and our people who come in and out of business on a daily basis, all of us as residents, so that we can start to learn about more things that will give you stress about going into a business after this is all over. What kind of things are you worried about? What kind of things are you stressed about, so that we can take those things into consideration when we're making plans on how we might start to open things back up as it is appropriately timed. Right now, clearly, we're still all staying home to stay safe, but now is the time where our businesses are starting to have a lot of anxiety about if they are going to be opening up again in a different capacity soon. How do they plan for that? What does that look like? And there's a lot of unknowns, which makes it difficult for them. So I think we have some anxiety happening with many of those business owners now. And then to mention, the financial burdens of some of the things that have come along with this situation. But we also have people scared in their homes that are afraid to leave and get really needed medical attention because they've been so nervous about this. They don't want to leave home even for critical services that they probably need to have. And so those things are all real issues, and we want to work with our health official, our mental health officials, as well as our public health officials. Bridget mentioned earlier about the Muth Serves website, so I'll mention it again. It's the muthserves.com, was created through the task force that we have here to address COVID-19 issues in Frankenmuth. And it's really just a matchmaking service. So we don't intend our team that's monitoring those requests that come in are not going to be providing any mental health or personal checkups on people that request it. But what we will do is put you in contact with the sources that Wendy and Rhoda have mentioned earlier. We'll be able to provide those out to the folks that request those kind of services. So as these decisions are made and it creates stress on any of you, I just encourage you to sort of reach out, whether it's to the city. They have an information line with any random question that we can bring back to the task force and find the right questions to be able to answer those. I do want to, before I'll take questions too, but I do want to address that if anybody would like to share ways that they think would help them feel more comfortable doing business, either as a customer or as a business owner in our new environment whenever that happens. You can share that. Actually, you can send an email directly to me at ceo@frankenmuth.org. Or you are also welcome. Senator Ken Horn here in our community has a work group with a number of senators from both sides of the aisle, and they are working on trying to make recommendations for safe workplaces. And so their website, where you can fill out a survey, it's been overloaded, which is good problem to have. So if you can't get through to that website, again, feel free to send me the information and I can forward it on to Senator Horn's office. But their website is it is MISafeWorkplaces, plural.com. MISafeWorkplaces.com. And they have a little survey there that you can fill out with some of the things that might make you feel more comfortable in the new business environment.
Great, thanks, Jamie. Chief Maurer or Mayor Ackerman, I think I see Chief Kearns on here as well. Do any of you have, and Adele Martin, if any of you have anything you'd like to share for the good of the group, I guess?
I would probably just affirm what Wendy and Rhoda so eloquently said to the adults in the group. We know, because we practice this every single day, that schedules offer a sense of security and certainty to our students, which is why we have those in place in our schools. And if parents can go and implement those at home, that can help so much with the anxiety and worry that students have during this time, especially if the news is on in the background, that if they can do that. Our continuity of learning plan was approved. And so I think that you'll probably see, no matter if it's the Frankenmuth School District or any school district that's out there, you'll start to see those plans roll out so that students are on that path to finish the school year, which is also very good. So students do best when they have that plan and they have that schedule. And I thank you again for saying that. Our schools have resources and counselors, and we have we'll have links out there so that they can get a hold of us. And then if it's a little bit more than we, if we know they need a little bit more than we have to offer, we'll connect them with outside resources as well. We're grateful for the resources that we have in town and the task force that has helped, I think, make our community so strong and make families feel better about this pandemic that's going on.
Chief Maurer?
Certainly, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. There's been a lot said today, and I totally agree with everything, especially the modeling behavior. Our young ones oftentimes watch more what we do than what we say. And I think as parents, and whether you're a leader in your neighborhood or your church, modeling behavior is certainly the best way to go. As the COVID curve peaks and as it declines, we have to follow the CDC recommendations. On the practical side of this, it's recommended that all Americans closely adhere to these guidelines set forth by the CDC and our healthcare professionals through modeling our behavior. We're advised to remind everyone to wash their hands with soap and water and alcohol-based sanitizer several times a day. The CDC is now recommending that Americans wear personal protective equipment when out in public, such as a cloth face cover, rubber gloves, and continue to practice that social distancing of 6 feet at a minimum. We're also reminded now to clean and sanitize all of our high-touch areas within our home, as this virus is able to survive on certain surfaces throughout the period. Early on, when the task force started to meet, the emotional impact of this COVID virus was identified in probably the second meeting. So the task force has been talking about this, and I welcome all the comments from our mental health professionals, and they carry a huge burden during these events. The most effective way of battling this, we've been told, is this social distancing, or maybe physical distancing, maybe was a better term for it, because we're all social creatures. But simply social distancing is to avoid vehicle travel unless absolutely necessary, defined as the executive order. With this being said, that doesn't mean that the executive order prohibits just not getting outside. Take a walk, organize a neighborhood gathering while still practicing social distance. You can organize a neighborhood gathering by sitting at the end of your driveway as weather permits and just enjoy each other's company and checking in on each other too. So stay home, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Phil, Chief Kearns?
Yeah, I would just like to say, again, thanks to everybody today, but also the care packages that both Chief Mower at the police department's been receiving, as well as the firefighters, have been extremely appreciated. The Girl Scouts and area church, just miscellaneous people have been dropping off prepackaged stuff, and the firefighters are very appreciative of that, as well as your prayers. And I know the police department is more operational in this on a day-to-day basis than the fire department is, but I know that it just is a great morale booster to our crews. You know, we don't want to get overwhelmed with stuff because we don't want to see it go to waste, but it's been coming in just perfectly, and we're really appreciative of all those efforts that that you guys are doing to support them, and it does have a mental health aspect to it as well. This community would never forget anybody, I think. I'm pretty convinced of that, and we just want to say thank you, and we'll get through it, and we're doing that. So, all right, take care.
Thanks, Chief. Mary Ann?
And yeah, thank you. Thanks to everyone who's been a part of this call, and to those of you that are listening. I just want to share, you've heard us talk about the task committee that meets. We meet once a week, and we hear from a number of people that are on our committee: pastors, business leaders, health professionals. And our health professionals that actually work at Covenant and St. Mary's in the emergency rooms are talking about the work that we are doing in our community is working. They are not overwhelmed like we read about that's happening in some of the municipal areas. They are able to handle the cases that are coming in. And the reason that is happening is because we are practicing social distancing and taking it very seriously. And we're rule followers out here. And so keep it up. It's working. Grateful for all of your support, and we will get through this. So hang in there.
All right, thank you, everybody. I don't have any other questions that have come in. I want to thank each of you for your time. I've had the opportunity, or the great luck, the past couple of days, a couple of residents have either written me notes or emails thanking me and telling me I'm doing a great job. And it was very nice, but what I wanted to share is that the people that I work with and the people that I work for, meaning, you know, the city of Frankenmuth, y'all make it very, very easy to do a good job. You're dedicated, you're rule followers, you constantly rise above. So keep it up. And we'll see you on the other side of this. Thanks again.
Thank you.